Live stream, please. Thank you very much. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to what is the second Development Standards Committee meeting of this new term of Angus Council. On this, Sarah, first of all, is there any apologies from absence?
No apologies, Convener.
Thank you. I'm just looking down the list. Councillor Durno, you're on the call now?
Yeah, I couldn't get in. I'm in now, thanks.
Okay, and I don't think we've got Councillor Nicholl yet, so if MD sees him come in, perhaps they could let us know, please. I'll try and keep an eye on it myself. Okay, no declarations of interest. The item...
Just to go back, there was no apologies, but we haven't done declarations yet.
I'm sorry, I've got to that, of course. Yeah, sorry, so no apologies. But declarations of interest, has anyone got any declarations in any of the papers?
Sorry.
No declarations? Nobody's flagging up here at all? No. Let's go down here.
Should come up at the top.
Yeah, no, nobody. Okay, no declarations of interest in that case. We'll move forward on to item 3 on the agenda, which is the Development Management Review Committee, and it's noted that Councillor Gall has resigned from the DMRC. Just for noting for the noting on the agenda and also on the minutes, I just see Councillor Gall has been misspelled. Apologies, Ian, for that. I know it should be G-A-L-L. Well spotted, Kenny. So the committee is asked to fill the vacancy on the DMRC, and it's a vacancy really to come from the non-administration. So members available, as far as I understand, would be Councillor Fairweather, Councillor McLaren, or Councillor Stewart. Is there a nomination for this? Councillor Fairweather? You're muted, David.
Typical. I'd like to put myself forward.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much.
Seconder, Convener.
Could I have a seconder, please?
I'll second that, Convener.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. I take it, is there no other nominations? We're happy to go with that? Good. Thank you, Councillor Fairweather, for joining that. That's great. Thank you. Okay. Agenda item 4 is on building warrants, and the committee is asked to note that during the period 11th of June to 5th of August 2022, a total of 134 building warrants, 5 demolition warrants, and 21 amendment to warrants have been approved, with an estimated cost of £810,152. I know a copy of the approved warrants has been sent to all members. On agenda item 5, on delegated decisions, again, the committee is asked to note that during the period 11th of June to 5th of August 22, again, a total of 110 planning applications have been approved and 1 refused under the scheme of delegation to officers. Again, these have been sent to every member. Agenda item 6 is the minute of the last meeting. Which was held on 21st of June 2022. Is that minute agreed, or has anybody got any obvious comments, points they want to make to correct it? Is it agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. So we submit for approval the minute of the meeting held on 21st of June 22. Great, so get on to the full business of the meeting now, and planning applications. To agenda item 7 is in regard to application for under Hatton Mill Quarry at Canal near Arbroath, report 195 of week 22. And can I ask Mr. Hunter to commence with this one?
Thank you, Convener. Can members see the slides? Thank you. As you've indicated, Convener, this is an application under Section 42 of the Planning Act. Now, this is a slightly unusual application in that it's an application to undertake development subject to different conditions than are attached to an existing planning permission. So in this case, the application relates to a quarry extension, an extension that was approved by committee in June 2019. So that is a planning permission that is extant. It's a planning permission that could currently be implemented. The conditions attached to that planning permission require the development to be undertaken and the land restored within a period of 5 years. The revised proposal seeks permission to allow that operation to take place over a further 7-year period. No other alterations to the proposal, it's just that 2-year extension to the time period within which extraction and final restoration could take place. So essentially the question for members today is whether that 2-year extended period is acceptable in relation to impact on environment, amenity or infrastructure. The consequences of an approval today is a new stand-alone planning permission, a new planning permission for the quarry extension. The old permission remains, it could still be implemented, but granting the permission today would result in a new permission. Apologies for that, I'll continue. Moving on, we see second slide. This just shows the general location of the application site. We have Freecombe to the west, application site outlined in red, public road that runs from Freecombe down past Douglasmuir, just running along the southern and western boundaries of the site. Access taken from a point to the south up this area here. This is an existing access that serves the existing quarry processing plant, which is included within the application site, but no alteration to that plant itself. What we're looking at is an extension to the operational area, the extraction area of the quarry, which would be located within the area to the west of the access road in here. Closest properties to the site are Balneves cottages, which lie a short distance to the west, just in the area that we see here. Moving on, the existing operational quarry plant. This is the processing plant, the stockpiling areas. As I've indicated, no substantial change to that area itself. What we're looking at is extraction in the area to the west of that. So roughly the agricultural land that you see identified with the cursor on the screen. These are essentially the same plans as approved by committee in June 2019. So quarry operated in 2 phases. The first phase is extraction in the area that we see here. And this is to a depth of around about 5.5 metres. So existing about 5.5 metres to extract sand and gravel. You see the pink tone, the purple tone to the left-hand side of the screen. This identifies a scheduled ancient monument. We've had consultation with Historic Environment Scotland. They've confirmed they have no objection to the application in relation to impacts upon the scheduled ancient monument. Again, you just see the stockpile area, the processing area located to the east of the extraction area. Also within the phase 1 development, screen bunds formed along the roadside and along part of the quarry access track just at the southern extent of the site. So in this approximate area, we have the formation of the screen bunds. It's restored, progressive restoration as part of the development, and we have the phase 2 extraction area located across this area will vary down to 5 metres in sections to the north and closer to 3 metres in areas to the west of the site. Again, you'll see conditions recommend with matters such as noise, dust mitigation strategy. These are essentially the same conditions that were attached in June 2019. Some cross sections, apologise, these probably won't be very clear on the screen, but the red line that you see identifies the extent of the extraction, the depth of the extraction, and the brown line shows the current ground level. So you can see that across the site, the varying depth of extraction, and the green line shows the proposed restored ground level. So restored ground levels sitting below current ground levels, slightly above the extracted level. So the proposal is that we see the site restored to aggregate within a 7-year period rather than the 5-year period approved. Just some images. This is from the public road to the west of the site. This is the phase 2 extraction area. The green area field that you see in here, we would have a soil bund providing some screening from the public road located around the periphery of the site. The phase 1 area located at the further extent of the field that we see in this area, with the processing area and stockpiling beyond that. From the southern extent, this is looking across the extraction area. Top photo shows the site as it exists at the moment. The bottom slide is a photo montage that shows the soil bund, and you can see the extraction area. This would be the phase 2 extraction area closest to the public road. The current proposal includes extension of the soil bund round this corner and up part of the western extent of the access road, just to provide additional screening from the public road to the south. It's a quarry. It will be visible. There will be some noise associated with it. There will be some dust associated with it, but committee has already determined those impacts are acceptable. The question today is whether those impacts would be acceptable over the additional 2-year period. This is a photograph from Hatton Mill to the north. The extraction area located in the middle of the screen, just identified with the cursor, and largely invisible, screened by existing landform from the properties to the north at Hatton Mill, and the processing area as existing, largely unchanged, visible from this area, but that is the current situation associated with the current operation of the quarry. This is moving around to a core path in the vicinity of Freecombe. Again, from this distance, fairly limited visual impact associated with the quarry operations, and those visual impacts essentially don't change with the current proposal. It will be visible for the additional 2-year period, but the consequence of the slightly slower extraction rate would be lesser vehicles on the road network. So some positive impacts and potentially some negative impacts associated with the slightly longer duration of extraction. But essentially, you'll see from the papers before you, no objections from the consultation bodies, no objections from any neighbours. Ultimately, we have a quarry site operated and extracted in a 7-year period rather than the 5-year period previously approved. No issues in terms of the development plan policies, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. I recognise that I remember this one going back to June 2019, and the previous issue here is the extension from 5 to 7 years. But we have new members on this committee, and wonder whether any members have got any questions to ask of Mr. Hunter on the application. No, all happy with that. And there are no speakers on this one. Have members? Oh, Councillor Dunn, was that a question for Mr. Hunter?
It's more just a comment, really.
We're moving on to comments now anyhow, so go ahead.
I'm happy with the application because obviously it's just an extension of what they have at the moment. The only concern I have, and I think that's been rectified, is that there's not going to be any more heavy lorries than there is at the moment. And also, if we could get a guarantee that when the rain comes, like it usually does at Inverkeeler in the autumn, that there won't be mud all over the road, because I have problems in this area with muddy roads and, constituents complaining about the cars and everything with mud. So if that could be sort of curbed, kept to the minimum and cleaned up, then I'd be quite happy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, is there any come back on that, Mr. Hunter, at all on Councillor Dunlop's point?
So I think just to clarify, the existing terms of the permit, or the existing quarry, extracts around about 130,000 tonnes of sand and gravel each year. There's no proposal to increase that. and the slightly longer duration of extraction realistically means that extraction rates are going to be lower than currently approved. So in terms of average number of vehicles, and we're only talking about average numbers, there should be no increase over the life of the quarry. There might actually be a slight downturn in the number of vehicle movements.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, convener, and good morning, everybody. Having been used to quarries in my past life in Aberdeenshire, there's not really much new to me here. But interestingly, I read and I endorse, when I look at consultations, no statutory bodies saying anything here. There's nobody living round about saying anything here. We know the reason for it, because COVID seemed to have an effect on everybody and everything. So the extension of the 2 years for me is very reasonable. So I can only endorse this, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can't see any other hands up for comments. So I think, bearing in mind that, as you just said, Councillor Clark, this is an extension really here, and revised proposals allow greater flexibility for the extraction rates over a longer period. There have been no objections to it, and no third-party objections certainly, and from consultation bodies. So it shouldn't give rise to any unacceptable impact on the environment, amenity, or infrastructure. The proposal complies with development plan policy, and there are no material considerations that justify a refusal. So I'll be moving up acceptance for application number 22/00249. Nothing else. There's no amendments to that. If I move it, do you need a seconder?
Indeed.
Members agree.
If everybody's agreed, yeah, okay, thank you very much. In that case, application, I say 22/00249 FULM is hereby approved. Thank you. Right, we can move on. I think, if I'm right in saying, Mr. Hunter, you're going to be addressing this as well, because I think Stephanie Porter's not well. So I think most of the papers today, Mr. Hunter is going to be addressing. So we can move on to agenda item 8, which relates to the Arbiki distillery and the erection of a wind turbine. Again, if we can ask, I'm just checking to see who's coming into the meeting. We can ask Mr. Hunter to load the slides and we can take that from there. Thank you.
Thank you again, convener. I hope that's visible to all members. Thank you. And as you say, convener, you'll be hearing from me quite a lot this morning, so I apologise in advance for that, and I apologise for the length of the presentation in relation to this application. We do have quite a few slides, so I will try and rattle through them as swiftly as I possibly can. This is a planning application that relates to land at Arbiki Distillery, Drumbernut by Montrose. It relates to the formation of a hydrogen production and storage facility, the erection of a wind turbine, and development that's associated with that. If I move on, we see it identifies the general location of the application site. We have Drumbernut Farm itself, distillery located at this location. Features of note, we have the A92 a short distance to the east of the Drumbernut. We have Lunan Bay, again a couple of kilometres, maybe a little bit more to the east. We'll refer to properties at Mount Boy as we move through the slides, and we also have objection from a property down in the vicinity of North Mains to the west. So again, some reference to that as we move through the slides. We have a number of other objections. The closest of those are from Lawton, which is roughly 4 kilometres to the southwest within the Lunan Valley area. The others from Borders, and from, I think there are maybe a couple from south of the border. But key features, Drumbernut Farm, Mount Boy, and property at Cot Hill. Just in that context, we have another slide Redline identifies we have Drumbertnut Farm located at the right-hand side of the screen. This will be the location of a hydrogen production and storage facility. We have a red line that extends to the bottom left of the screen. This is a proposed underground cable connection, and at the left-hand side to the west, just in the proximity of Cott Hill, we have a proposed wind turbine. Just on this slide, again, we have the properties at Mount Boy located at the top of the screen, and you can perhaps make out the alignment of the A92 just in the bottom right-hand corner. If we look firstly at Drumbertnut, this is the hydrogen production element. You can see existing properties. This is the distillery, the associated visitor centre, and the other blue dots identify residential properties in the proximity of the site itself. If we move on, you see again the distillery buildings and the proposed compound associated with the production facility located just to the north of the existing buildings. The hatched line that you see running in this direction is a connection to the grid. So we have an overhead power line in the location of the cursor that we see here. So potential for the connection to the grid. We have a further dotted line that would take hydrogen from the compound to a boiler that would be located within the distillery buildings, and a new flue erected at this location for the hydrogen boiler itself. Just a visualization, a 3D view that shows the nature of the development. We have a fence indicated there'll be some hedging to supplement that, and the equipment that would be associated with the production and storage of the hydrogen itself. So all located within the compound in the proximity of the distillery building itself. And you can see the boiler house that would accommodate the hydrogen boiler with the associated flue. Again, just an elevation detail of that. This is looking effectively from the north, so you can see the compound against the backdrop of the existing buildings. In a photographic view, we have residential properties behind the person that's taking the photographs. Compound located just in the middle ground of this photograph. So in this general area, lower lying area with the backdrop of the distillery buildings, and a new flue erected on the boiler house building that we see located at the left-hand side of the screen. So no significant issues in relation to this element of the proposal. I think the most controversial part relating to this application is the wind turbine, and we'll move on to that as we move through the slides. The turbine itself located a distance to the west of Drumbertnut. You see Drumbertnut located at the right-hand side of the screen. Wind would be located to the northwest of properties at Cott Hill, and to the south of properties at Mount Boy. Now, quite a few properties located up in the Rossi area, quite a few properties located round about Mount Boy, and we have 4 objections from properties located just within the area identified by the cursor that we see here. Also point out to members, there's reference in the committee report to a planning permission for a new house, and that's identified the circle just on the plan that we see here. So that's located to the north of the turbine location itself. Also properties across Pamfrey and Renmuir, Arbickie, a short distance just off the screen to the south of this image. A number of letters of support from properties at Arbickie, and as I've indicated, a further objection from a property in proximity of North Mains, again just located to the west of the application site. Photograph from the turbine location looking back towards Drumbertnut, the distillery, the visitor centre, and the cable connection effectively following the route of the unclassified public road. So just to the north of that route, the underground cable trench is dug, the cable is laid, and the trench is backfilled. So no significant impact with that. It's not affecting any special areas. It's largely agricultural ground following the alignment of the public road. At the turbine site itself, we have the unclassified public road. We have an existing track that would be subject of some improvement to facilitate the construction of the wind turbine. Wind turbine located at the western extent of the compound, hard standing area, and a couple of smaller electrical substation, electrical buildings associated with the turbine itself. Typical structures associated with a wind turbine of this size. This is looking across the wind turbine location. So again, just in the middle ground, the properties at Mount Boy, there are some trees, some landscaping around about that, but the turbine would be visible from those properties, from the environs of those properties. Again, just to pick out on this slide, you can perhaps make out just an alteration. We've got the golden field with the barley, and then the greenation of the new house that has planning permission. Again, just on this slide, picking out the Mount Boy, the Rossi radio mast located just above the trees in this location. Not very clear on the image, but that mast is round about 50 metres in height, sitting on the ridge. Now again, photographs, the photomontages that you'll see as we move through the slides do tend to flatten out the landscape. They make features in the landscape look slightly further away. They make the landscape look less tall, but it's an impression of the impact of the development. This is the proposed wind turbine itself, sizable structure, around about 77 metres in height. You can see the height to the hub of the turbine, and you can see the rotor diameter associated with that. But round about 77 metres to height, 46 metres to hub height. Now, just to give some context to that, we have an extract from our an implementation guide on renewable energy development. So this is identifying wind turbines relative to some features that members might be familiar with. So we have a typical single-storey property, typical two-storey property, early monument, Eastern Old Parish Church in Forfar, and you can see turbines around about 100 metres in height, quite typical of our landscape. What we're looking at would be about 77 metres in height to blade tip, so sitting in round about this height, 46 metres to hub height, so a hub sitting in round about the area that we see here. And again, just to give some context, this is the wind turbine at North Mains of Conn and Scythe, so just to the north of Redford. This turbine, around about 67 metres to height, a hub height similar to what we'd be looking at with the current application, but the blade diameter is much less in this case. So the overall height of this turbine, about 67 metres, so roughly 10 metres to blade tip lower than the turbine that we're considering today. North Mains of Conn and Scythe, North Mains of Conn and Scythe farmhouse located just in the area to the right hand side of the screen, and that's a separation distance close to about 400 metres. We have other properties round about this turbine, maybe a dozen or so properties within a radius of about 800 metres. So that's just to give some context for what we're looking at today. Shows a zone of theoretical visibility, so turbine located at the centre of this drawing, and this is a drawing that gives an impression of where the turbine would be visible to blade tip from the surrounding area. Now this is theoretical visibility. It assumes there are no buildings, it assumes there is no planting, landscaping, trees. So this is a bare earth representation, and this is to blade tip. So you can see, in theory, it's visible over a fairly significant area, but if members think about turbines within Angus at the present time that are similar in height, that visibility in reality is more restricted than is perhaps shown. But just to pick out a couple of key features in terms of the Council's guidance, the blade tip, the turbine, is not visible from Montrose Basin, an area that we recognise as being particularly sensitive, and it's not visible from House of Durn. Again, one of the key things that our guidance is trying to minimise. Perhaps also pick out the Lunan Valley, located to the south. Again, limited visibility from Lunan Valley itself. Another zone of theoretical visibility drawing, and this time it's to hub height, and this time focused over a more concentrated area. So again, picking out the Lunan Valley, limited visibility within the Lunan Valley, and more limited visibility from recreational areas round about Lunan Bay to the east. Rossie Moor, we have a site of special scientific interest located just within the Rossie Moor area, and you can see limited visibility and certainly areas within that where the turbine wouldn't be visible. Number of viewpoints identified where we have photo montages and images just to represent what the turbine would look like, and I'm going to bore you to tears by running through those, and we will do that in an anti-clockwise direction. So a trip around in this general context just to give an impression of the turbine itself. So this is from Arbiki, number of properties at Arbiki and a number of properties where we have letters of support. So this is looking in roughly a northwesterly direction, back towards Drumbertnet, located just at the right-hand side of the screen. Mountboy, Rossie Moor, located in this area. Again, you can perhaps make out the radial mast, and this would be the turbine itself, and that's a distance of about 1 kilometre. So this is giving an impression of the height of the turbine at a distance of around about 1 kilometre. This is an image from Cott Hill. So this is roughly from the public road immediately to the south of the site. So a little more than a couple of 100 metres from the turbine. There are properties at Cott Hill there, maybe another 400, 450 or so metres to the south. Those properties enjoy views to the west and to the south. So they do have views that look away from the turbine. Again, views to the south in this area important because it's views towards Lunan Bay and views towards the sunlight. There's potential for shadow flicker to affect the properties in this location, but again, you'll see we have conditions that potentially seek to deal with that. We have conditions that seek to deal with noise emissions for the closest properties, and environmental health colleagues are satisfied that impacts would not be unacceptable. And again, we have representation from a resident at this location indicating support for the proposal. I understand that it's persons that have an interest in the business that reside at this location. Moving around to Drumbertnet itself, so this is round about the access to the distillery, looking in a westerly direction back towards the turbine. There will be other turbines visible at a distance within this view. The Ark Hill turbines located a good distance to the west would be visible, and some of the other larger turbines, the Mainsacon and Scythe turbine that we've looked at, will be visible in certain conditions from this view, but all at distances which meet the separation distances identified in council guidance. This is moving around to Rossie School. So this is in the vicinity of the properties at Mountboy. This particular image, maybe around about 1 kilometre, maybe just over 1 kilometre. So a little bit further away than the properties at Mountboy. Properties at Mountboy around about 800, close to 900 metres. And you can see the turbine is quite a substantial structure. As I say, in reality, it will probably appear closer and it will probably appear higher, but it's a single turbine. The arc of view from those properties that's affected by this is relatively limited. It's fairly typical of separation distances that we have for turbines elsewhere in Angus, and properties would typically have views within the remainder of their environs that would not, or that could be enjoyed without sight of the turbine itself. And this is just a wireline diagram. This is at a separation distance of about 900 meters, so slightly closer than the photomontage, but again, just an impression of what would be seen from the Mountboy properties. So substantial structure, a significant impact on their visual amenity, an adverse impact on their visual amenity, I would suggest, but one that is not unacceptable, having regard to other decisions that the council has taken for similar developments elsewhere in Angus. Moving round, there are core paths in the vicinity of Rossie Moor. So this is round about Nichols Loch, which is located to the north of the turbine. And again, separation distance, this time closer to 2 kilometres. You can see the turbine, a little bit of backdrop, but certainly breaking the skyline at this location, but again occupying a very limited amount of the view from the core path. And there are other areas within the Rossie Moor area where views of the turbine would not be seen. So you could enjoy recreation within the Rossie Moor area without the adverse visual impact of the wind turbine itself. Moving around, mentioned the properties at Pamfrey. Again, distance close to around about 2 kilometres, and you can see the turbine clearly visible from those properties. Probably a significant impact and certainly an adverse impact, but again at the separation distance involved, with the very narrow angle of view that would be affected from those properties, not an impact that we consider to be unacceptable. This is from a view from the A92 in the proximity of Bray Head. A couple of images here. Top one just shows a photograph of the view. We have the industrial building located at the junction of the road that leads along to the distillery. So distillery maybe just in the middle ground that we see here, and a wire line at the bottom. So turbine would be visible from this location, but again, when you look at that in the context of the landform, the landscape, buildings, trees, certainly in some views, that visibility will be limited. If you move beyond the property here, you will see the turbine, but views of the turbine along the A92 would be intermittent, and at locations they would be screened by landform, buildings, and the landscaping that's present. This is a view from Lunan Bay to the south. This is from the beach or the crest of the dunes. So again, blade of the turbine potentially visible, but this is a bare earth representation. So if you imagine trees and buildings within the view, the visibility of the turbine is likely to be limited, and at the distances involved, unlikely to be a significant impact on the recreational amenity, the enjoyment people take from their experience at Lunan Bay. And we do have a visualisation that suggests that the turbine would not be visible at all from the Lunan Bay car park. We're getting close to the end. This is the view from Dunanald in the proximity of the castle. So the castle is a listed building. It is a designed landscape, so a particular sensitivity. Again, at the separation distance involved, the impacts of the turbine are not considered to be unacceptable insofar as they relate to that designated site. The hub and blade tip of the turbine just visible above the ridge that you see here. But again, when you introduce the localised landscaping, the features up at Bray Head of Lunan, visibility likely to be more restricted. A view from Inverkeeler, so this is to the south. Again, hub height and blade tip visible, but again, at the distances involved, not an impact that's considered to be unacceptable or untypical of other impacts that are experienced associated with similar height turbines throughout the Angus area. And we have the core path just to the south of Lunan Bay. Again, reasonable distance to the turbine here. You can see turbine clearly visible, some backdropping provided by the cairngorms that you can just see to the middle ground of the slide. Full height of the turbine visible, but at that height, not an unacceptable impact. Our policies are generally supportive of renewable energy developments where impacts can be appropriately mitigated. You'll see we have a number of conditions associated with this proposal that seek to minimise impacts. They seek to minimise impacts associated with noise, both from the turbine and the operation of the hydrogen production plant. And we have conditions that relate specifically to the turbine that seek to ensure mitigation of issues such as noise and shadow flicker, and ultimately restoration of that site. This is a proposal that would help the existing business. It would help provide it with energy security, something that's quite important at this time. It would assist in reduction of carbon emissions associated with the proposal, and those are material considerations. It's a proposal that complies with our development plan policy. It's a proposal that's consistent with our guidance for renewable energy and wind turbine development. And it's a proposal that's recommended for approval subject to the conditions before you today. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. That's a very thorough and detailed presentation. It justifies, I think, bearing in mind the content. So we'll take some time over this. Have members, we will have some speakers shortly, but has members got any questions to ask Mr. Hunter on the application at this stage? I'm not seeing any hands. Okay, we can, in that case, we've got no questions for Mr. Hunter. Thanks, Alan. We'll move on to our speakers, and we have...
Convener, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sorry,
sorry, just regarding Councillor
yeah,
Nicholl's
apologies.
attendance.
I would think about this. So, Councillor Nicholl, you joined the actual meeting commencement. Can you tell me what point you came in on Mr. Hunter's his presentation?
I had technical problems, and I joined when he was showing the thing, but I will stay out of this item.
Okay, thanks, Councillor, for your understanding. That makes it simple in that case. Otherwise, we have to go back to the beginning. Okay, just so no questions from you, Councillor Nicholl, to the applicants or the voting on this one. Okay, we can move to, we have a speaker, Ms. Kirsty Black, who is a supporter of the application, and then we have the applicant after that, who's supported by his own agents here as well today. Can I let speakers know that they have 5 minutes maximum to address the committee? And we'll start with Miss Black, if she's there. Miss Black, can you hear me okay? Oh, sorry, Councillor Dunlop. So I've just picked up your hand, sorry.
Sorry, Convener, just to let you know that I have to go and convene another meeting, and it was just to let you know that I don't have any objections as one of the local councillors in the area, but I will have to actually leave because there's other conveners from other councils waiting on myself. So okay. I need to leave, but I'd just like to say thank you, and okay, speak to you soon.
Thank you, Councillor Dunlop. Okay, thank you. Right, Miss Black, are you there?
I am, yes. Hello.
Right, thank you. I know you're a supporter of the application, but so you have maximum of 5 minutes to address the committee, and they will have the option to actually have questions for you after that. So fire away.
Okay. So good morning, everyone. So as you heard, my name is Kirsty Black, and I am the master distiller at our Beaky Distillery. So I've been with the company from the very beginning, when it was just an empty farm shed. But even then, it was the field to bottle vision and the general desire to do the right thing in regards to sustainability and the environment that made me want to work here. So today I am here representing not just myself, but all the other employees and supporters of this project. So I live at one of the cottages at our Beaky farm, which is located, as you heard, about 1 kilometre from the wind turbine and less than 2 kilometres from the hydrogen plant. And I have no objections to this proposal. 8 of my colleagues, all of whom live and work on the farm, have also written in support of this project. So we've all been involved from the outset. We're aware of the potential impacts of the proposal. We've reviewed the undertaken by Locogen and are happy with their conclusions. And as the nearest residential neighbours to this project, we have no concerns with the impact of the proposal. Actually, on the contrary, we're pretty excited and extremely supportive of this project, as it will further improve the sustainability credentials of our Beaky distillery. Since the launch of our climate positive gin and vodka made from peas, we've become recognised globally as leading the way in and consulted on sustainability practices within distilling. Obviously, a key part of being sustainable, however, is how we get our energy. So since we began distilling in 2014, we've been looking for an alternative to oil. And that's not been that easy, but we think the move to green hydrogen is by far the most promising means of reaching this goal. It'll allow us to reduce our carbon footprint, obviously reducing our reliance on fossil fuels, but all in the same time allowing us to continue to produce our spirits uninterrupted. Associated with the government-backed Green Distillery Scheme, and we're feeling very proud and extremely honoured to be in receipt of this award. Given our history of on-site research and determination to continue to be at the forefront of innovation and sustainability, we feel we are the perfect business to use to implement this demonstrator project. Personally, I'm very excited to showcase this to other distilleries and other industries out with the alcohol, but also be part of the catalyst for Angus to realise its potential as a hydrogen economy, contribute to Scotland and the UK's net zero targets. So that's all I've got to say. Thank you for giving me the time to speak today.
Thank you, Ms. Black, for that. Before we move on to the applicant speaker, does any committee members have any questions for Ms. Black at this time? No. Well, thank you, Ms. Black, for your time. John Stirling is the applicant. Ms. Stirling, again, you are free to speak to the committee, address the committee for 5 minutes, please, if you want to go ahead.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Stirling. I'm the owner and founder, along with my 2 brothers, Ian and David, of Beaky Distilling Limited. I'm also joined today by Jack Byers and Ewan Hutchinson, both from Locogen, who have provided technical advice and expertise on this project. The Stirling family has been farming for close to 400 years, and we moved to Angus Coast back in the 1920s. So we have strong and historic ties to land and local area, even though it feels a bit longer than that. We now own and operate a 2,000-acre farm, which allows land for our farming activities as well as the distillery. We employ 36 people within the distillery, as well as 10 employees across the farm. My brothers and I came up with the idea of building a distillery, went out for a few drinks together. We have the ambitions of making the finest Scotch whisky using the farm-to-bottle process. The distillery has now been operational since 2014, and we established our core ethos of field to bottle within that time, and sustainability is at the heart of all our decision making. Our 3 potato varieties, rye, wheat, barley, peas and beans from the farm are used to make our whisky, gin and vodka spirit varieties, and we're constantly looking to innovate with new crops to make different spirits. Our master distiller, Dr. Kirsty Black, who's just spoken, has completed a PhD in the use of legumes in brewing and distilling, and we have used this knowledge to create we have produced the world's first climate positive gin, Nadar, and we're the only people in the world to ever have done this. So tip my hat to Kirsty. We boast provenance and traceability within our products. Our raw ingredients come from the farm. We have our own water source. We have rooftop solar panels, providing us with our own renewable electricity, and we recycle any waste product in the farm where we can. However, being rural location, we are currently dependent on imported oil to create steam, which is then used within the distillation process. The burning of oil accounts for the vast majority of our carbon emissions and also exposes us to price volatilities and supply risk, particularly as you can imagine in the current economic crisis. Our distillery was subject to a grant award in 2020 through the Green Distilleries competition run by the UK Government's Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. This culminated in a feasibility study assessing the opportunity for hydrogen to be created from renewables and our own land to then be used as an alternative clean fuel to oil. The feasibility study was so well received by BEIS that we were subsequently awarded a £3 million grant to build out the project, which is under discussion today. To be awarded this grant, we had to prepare a clear costed project programme, obtain expertise across the renewables, hydrogen, electricity grid, boiler and construction industries, put together a comprehensive risk register with mitigation strategies, and show the clear benefits this innovative project will bring to ourselves, but also to the wider distilling sector and process heat industries. The project is highly innovative, being the first of its kind anywhere in the world. We're very proud to be leading the way in a new zero carbon solution within the distilling sector. Approximately 80% of the carbon emissions associated with distilleries come from the burning of fuel for steam. There's therefore huge replicability across the sector, and our Beaky would be a world leader. We are in a climate emergency and every business must play its part. This project can act as a catalyst across the industry, and we're proud to be leading sustainability in the drink sector. We'd attract and welcome visitors from other distilleries, process heat industry, students, renewable energy professionals, and anyone interested in utilising green hydrogen within Angus and further afield.
With 1 minute left, Mr. Stirling.
With the backing of governments, this project has already drawn significant positive press attention. It will only increase once the project is operational. The project aligns with the wider economic activity within Angus, including projects within the Taste City deals and economic and tourism strategies. The establishment of green hydrogen production hub within Angus will act as a stimulus for further projects, allowing hydrogen to feature across other areas of economic activity, including transport, on-road vehicles, shipping and other heavy industries. When designing and sizing the project, we've been cognizant of previous wind farm applications in the area. We've taken on board previous comments and reduced the size of a single wind turbine, relocating downhill to a less visible location. And what I would kind of finally say is, this is a world first. This is in Angus. This is benefit for way more than just us, but the whole community in Scotland. And we hope the committee shares our enthusiasm for the project and realises the innovation, sustainability credentials and enormous potential of this project, and look forward to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stirling, thanks very much. Generous there on your time. That's fine. Very interesting. Okay. I know Mr. Stirling is accompanied by his advisors on this one, but I think we can now move to questions. Do any members have questions for Mr. Stirling or for his advisors? Councillor Duff.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yeah, I have a couple of questions, one a technical one and one out of curiosity. The technical one, I guess, when I speak to people about hydrogen, the sort of non-technical people start to get really concerned that it's a risk. So I'd appreciate if Mr. Stirling can just give us one or two reassurances about the safe storage of hydrogen on the site. The second question, really, it's obviously exciting new technology. Will this be the first hydrogen electrolyser in Angus, if approved? That's my
Mr. Stirling.
Thank you. I'll pass that over to my technical people. What I would say, though, is my mother is the nearest person to the hydrogen plant, and I still love my mother, so I think the safety is probably within that point, but I'll pass over to the experts.
I can jump in on that one if everyone can hear me okay.
Yeah, Mr. Barnes, carry on.
Yeah, thanks very much. Yes, so working with hydrogen systems over last few years, I'm well aware of the general public perception, perhaps, of hydrogen systems. However, if done correctly, there's nothing there to suggest it's any more dangerous than what's there at present. You have a big oil tanker sitting there, which obviously could be ignited if things went wrong. Hydrogen is safely stored within vessels outside. If there is a leak, then because hydrogen is so much lighter than air, then it shoots directly up into the sky for the outdoor compound. Wherever it's handled inside, then we have sensors detecting inlet and outlet in the pipe. So any detection, the system will automatically shut down. And everything is ATEX rated as well, which means it has to be basically the best equipment possible for hydrogen detection and mitigation against any potential leakage. I hope that answers your question. I can elaborate if there's anything more.
Happy with that, Councillor Duff?
Yeah, that's grand. Thank you.
I would just say, in terms of Angus, yes, it's leading in Angus. It'll be leading in Scotland. It'll be leading in the UK. It's highly innovative technology that hasn't been done anywhere before. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, but I have a question myself for perhaps the applicant and for Mr. Byers. Then, just a more general one, because I think the major concern, if you like, here is the turbine and its location and its size. Can I just ask a general question as to why you chose the specific location you have, and why, to a layman, it might be more obvious to bring it closer to the distillery?
So I can start that one, and then my colleague Ewan can back me up after. But ultimately, we start any wind turbine application using constraints mapping, so seeing what constraints there are. The number one thing here with regards to turbine location height is MOD radar from lookers. So that restricts your height. I mean, pretty much anywhere east, you're restricted about 20 metres. So that makes any wind turbine impossible, really. You would get objection from MOD and there wouldn't be any mitigation strategy to that. So we got as close to the distillery as we could, whilst also being conscious of any other constraints. So obviously ecological, visual, and other residential amenity. I don't know if Ewan has anything to add to that.
Yeah, it's really a kind of balance of all of those. Like Mr. Hunter pointed out in his presentation, it's the policy specifically advises against being visible from Montrose Basin, which pushes you further in the direction that we've come. We've taken, as John said in his presentation, we've taken cognizance of comments which were made in previous wind turbine applications in this area. We've come down off the top, away from Rossie Moor, and you could see in the various photographs which Mr. Hunter showed, we sit down in the landscape compared with, I think, the example that he gave at the start of his presentation of another turbine which was slightly smaller but sat, more prominently above the nearest sort of residential properties. So even in relation to Mountboy, we're sitting 15-20 metres lower in the landscape. And all of these factors have sort of fed in. We're far enough away from the nearest noise-sensitive properties not to be an issue on noise. We've taken into account shadow flicker, ecology. We've come back from the sort of field edges where there's woodland to avoid any ecological impact. We're on the side of the track to avoid any unnecessary interference with John and his agricultural activities there. So it's, we've taken all of those points into consideration and come up with this location as being the best location.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much for that. Have any other committee members got questions for the applicant or Mr. Byers Hutchison? Not seeing any hands. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, for your contribution, and we'll move on to comments from members for any debate. Is there any comments on this application? Councillor Melville, you can start off.
Thanks very much, convener, and can I say thank you to Mr. Hunter for his very, very detailed presentation there. I've been looking through the papers, and at point 6 on page 70 in the consultations, I'm not noting any objections, including from Environmental Health, Nature Scot, the RSPB and SEPA. So they all seem to be fairly content with this, provided that the conditions attached go ahead. I am very much in favour of more renewable energy infrastructure. I think given the scale and the pressing nature of the climate emergency, I think we all need to get used to seeing renewable energy infrastructure. And I must commend the ambition of our Beaky distillery to be a Scotland leading industry in this regard. And I have no objections. And in fact, I would wholeheartedly support this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Melville. We'll move on to Councillor Dorn.
Hi, thank you. I was
You've frozen, Councillor Dorn.
going to raise a question as well about the consideration of the location for the turbine, but I'm really satisfied with it. Am I not working?
You're freezing now and again. But are you
Okay.
basically saying you're quite satisfied having heard what you've just heard? Right.
Yeah, and I think this has been a thorough application that's looked at all of the circumstances. So yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you for that. Understand. Councillor Fairweather.
Right, thanks, convener. Can I just first of all thank Kirsty and John and their team, Jack and Ewan, for their comprehensive explanation of this application. This is absolutely amazing for Angus. A world first. I mean, that is just a wow factor for me. Can I just congratulate Arbiki on their success in the past, their continued innovation, and I certainly wish them all the very best for the future. And I can assure you, I am backing the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fairweather. Councillor Duff, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Yes, I would say there's not many planning applications I'm excited to see them, and this one I'm really excited about. I can't quite claim it as being in my ward because I think it's maybe slightly over the border into Arbroath East, but I'm going to claim it as a Montrose one. Yeah, I'm really excited also to see the fact that we're using electrolyzers to produce the hydrogen on site. That seems to be the way forward, and it's a real first. And yeah, my congratulations to Mr. Stirling and his team. I have been a pretty consistent supporter over the years on renewable energy developments. I've often found myself on the losing side of votes on this committee. I certainly hope I'm not on the losing side today. I'm supportive of wind turbines generally. I am supportive of renewable energy. I think this is an excellent project, and we should be really proud. It's a project that's going to be very much a first for not just Angus but Scotland. So I'm fully supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Councillor Fairweather, you may take your hand down if it's okay. Councillor Braze.
Yes, thanks, convener, and thanks to Mr. Hunter. An excellent presentation. Thanks to Kirsty and John for very eloquent and informative presentations. Like Councillor Duff, I'm really quite excited about this. We're looking at a farm business here that's well down the route of vertical integration and adding value to Angus produce, which can only be good for the army. This particular project, huge benefits in terms of climate change and carbon reduction. Wind turbines, well, some people think of them as ugly monstrosities. Some people think of them as elegant things of beauty. I would suggest, though, that the vast majority of people these days don't think of them much at all, because they've become an established part of the landscape in Angus and across Scotland. And they're there for a purpose, and that purpose is to produce energy so we don't have to burn so much fossil fuel. And I do sympathise for those people who feel that their view is being spoiled, or they might have other concerns. There are objections, and yes, I do sympathise with them, but we really can't base this decision on just those objections. I would also like to add that the whole Arbiki project, the whole business concept, very progressive, but the attitude of the people behind this is progressive in so many other ways. A lot of the, well, at least some of the crop is grown outside my window here at Barnes of Craig, where John Stirling is farming, and they have a very progressive attitude as to how they farm and how they respect and treat those who are living round about where they're farming. And that's to be welcomed too. So all in all, very excited about this and hugely supportive. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm just going to intervene here quickly to say, look, I'm going to try and keep this to 3 minutes maximum comments from each as time moves on. So we'll move on to Councillor Clark next, please.
Thank you very much, Convener, and thanks everybody who's spoken this morning. And I'm not going to waste words on that because it's all been so much. I've stood right next to a wind turbine in the Huntley area where I've actually touched and had a photograph taken. I've also been in my past listened to so many people who are very frightened, and we've heard this again. But really, we've got to move on, and you've been really, really brave, John Stirling. Well done. It's not in my ward. We could be, maybe in the future, but we cannot sit here and pretend that we haven't even thought about green energy enough, and we're doing it now. We have to be innovative, and once again, very, very brave. So all power to your elbow, and I do care for people who are worried about this, but please speak to each other, and I know you're doing it. Do it again and again for people. This is the way forward for Scotland and the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, this for me is all the boxes in terms of renewables. I mean, let's face it, renewables are the way forward. So yeah, I'm really happy to see this come forward. I'm happy to support it. And I did look at some of these the comments from people that were opposing it. And you know, they were saying about it being on the sight lines and it's going to spoil the view and everything. You know, we've got all these wind turbines out in the North Sea now, and you know, we're all going to see that from right down the coastline. It's just, you know, part and parcel of moving forward, like some of my colleagues have said. And yeah, I think the Arbiki product for me is fantastic. I love the gin. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stewart. I think the last one before I is Councillor Gall.
Thank you. It's so great to hear such supportive comments on this project. Arbeki's fast become a household name, what they've done, and here in Angus, it's amazing to see wind turbines are now a common feature. You don't have to go far, and you don't just see the occasional one. They're abundant. But I think the really important thing about this is not just a case of a turbine going to grid and, you know, it's a feature that's great. There's a huge amount of potential education from this. The fact that this is a first and could be a platform to extend right down makes this even better. And anything we can support in Angus on a this progressive family business is brilliant, and it's so happy to support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gall. I can't see any other hands from elected members, so this is an important application, and if you'll just bear with me, I think it needs to be given for all Myers due consideration. Summing up really, development plan and national policies provide strong support for proposals that provide for the generation of renewable energy. The wind turbine, however, is relatively large, and it will give rise to some adverse impacts upon the landscape and the visual amenity. However, it's proposed in an area where council policy guidance indicates there is some capacity for turbines of this scale. It's not considered unacceptable having regard to the significance of the impact and the decisions on other turbine development in Angus. We've been more restrictive on turbine development in Angus compared with other councils, Aberdeenshire, for example. There have been no significant issues that cannot be addressed by conditions, and there are some, so the report, I think there's 11 in all that deal with the amenity factor, so that is a big consideration. So in these circumstances, it's considered the proposal is generally compliant with relevant development plan policies and guidance. The proposal complies, as I say, with the development plan. It attracts significant support from Scottish planning policy, subject to planning conditions which are being placed here. So there are no material considerations that justify refusal. So I will be listening to what everybody has said, and we've heard today I'll be moving approval of this planning application number 21/01002 full. Is it general? There's no amendments to this, so do I have general support? Is that approved?
Agreed.
Thank you very much, everyone. So, as I say, application 21/01002 full is approved. Thank you, everyone, for your input to that. If we can move on to agenda item 9 now, which is, that's where I'll get my pronunciation wrong probably. I think it's Benahi in Shield Hill Road in Kirriemuir, which is for a house build in the rear of the garden of the house. So again, take it, Alan, it's you again. Could you start the slides, please?
This is me again, convener. Good to hear. This is a planning application, full application, as you've indicated, for the erection of a new house within the curtilage of Benahi at Shield Hill Road. Proposal also involves formation of a new access for the Benahi property itself. Just a slide, quite a lot of information on this, but if we start at the top left-hand corner of the screen, application site is located within the Northmuir area of Kirriemuir, so within the development boundary of Kirriemuir, and in an area where our policies are generally supportive towards new housing development, where it doesn't give rise to unacceptable impacts on amenity, environment, or infrastructure. Just again, staying at the top of the screen, we have the Redline planning application site. You can see the Benahi property just identified with the cursor. So it's one half of a pair of semi-detached properties. And if we screen, you can see the proposal is to form a curtilage, a new curtilage for Benahi, which matches the curtilage at other part of the semi-detached property at Barbara Bank. So it's effectively duplicating or replicating the current situation for the neighbouring property to the west. A new access formed from Shield Hill Road that would serve the parent property. So new access formed in this area and car parking spaces provided for the parent property. Substantive part of the application is the erection of the new house within the area identified in green. So we have an existing garage building associated with Benahi at the current time. That would be associated with the new house. That garage currently takes access from the unadopted road located to the east of the site. So we have an unadopted road leading down this area, and we have an access to the existing garage that serves Benahi, and that would now be associated with the new house that we see located in this location. So no intensification of use of this access, because it's still being used by the single property, still being serving the same garage, a new access serving Benahi located at the northern extent of the site. A couple of features just to pick out on this slide. We have Northmuir Hall, and you'll see there's some representation in relation to potential impact on the hall. Just draw your attention to the property identified at Callanish. That property reasonably close to the hall at the present time, maybe 6-7 metres or so separation distance. The new house would be around about 10 metres from the hall itself, so a slightly greater distance. This is predominantly a residential area. The hall operates within that context, and we're satisfied it could continue to operate quite satisfactorily with the provision of the new house. Also, just draw out a matter that's highlighted in the report. The house has been moved slightly further north on the plot to take it away from an existing Lelandai style hedge that provides some screening for the properties to the south. So we're looking at a separation distance of around about 2.5 metres between the southern extent of the house and the southern boundary, which neighbours the properties beyond. The house itself, fairly standard in terms of its design. The elevation that we see here is the elevation that would face towards the Northmuir Hall and its car park, front door, a couple of windows, and a couple of roof lights, one above a stairwell, the other serving a small bathroom at the upper level. Just draw attention to the gables. This is the gable that would face towards the northwest. So blank gable at ground floor and at upper floor. Southeast elevation, so this is the elevation facing towards the south. We have a door and a window at ground floor, but no upper floor windows facing directly towards neighbouring property. And you'll see we are proposing a condition to remove permitted development rights to ensure that further windows cannot be created at an upper floor level that might subsequently impact on the amenity of neighbours. This is the elevation that would face towards the parent property at Benihee. Again, you can see a number of roof lights. The two at the northern extent of the property are serving the void below. So those are serving or providing light to the living accommodation at ground floor. The middle roof light serving a hallway that you can perhaps see here, and the final window serving the bedroom. Now, the separation distance between those upper floor windows and the boundary with Benihee would be around about 13-14 metres. So again, compliant with our design guidance and the separation distances that are required for upper floor windows to boundaries with neighbouring properties. But in this case, the impact is on the applicant's existing property at Benihee. Moving on, we have an aerial photograph. The yellow dots identify the location of those properties. So we see quite a few objections from people that live round about, and understandably some concern in relation to change in the immediate area. This is the Benihee property, the neighbouring property at Barber Bank. So essentially a new boundary formed in this area. So we have a curtilage for Benihee that matches the plot size of the Barber Bank property. New house located within the area that we see here. And again, plot size comparable with the plot sizes in the surrounding area. There are a range of plot sizes. The Callanish plot is quite substantial. The parent property, the Benihee property, would have a curtilage of around about 740 roughly metres. We have a minimum plot size requirement of 400 square metres. The plot that we're looking at here is around about 650 square metres, excluding the access that's taken through the Northmuir Hall. And again, in terms of the design of the property, it's fairly typical of the general appearance of properties in the surrounding area. Moving on, unadopted road to the east of the site, so application site located in this area. And you can see there are some self-seeded trees within the application site area. Those would be removed. They are of no significant townscape value. They're of no particular value in terms of their ecology, and we have conditions that require compensatory planting as part of the development. Existing access into the site that serves the current garage, and that would be utilised. It's taken through the hall's car park. Some objection in relation to the width of that, but that's predominantly a civil matter. What we have is an existing access that serves a single property, and the resultant situation will be an access that serves a single property. Within the site itself, you can see the driveway, garage just behind the foliage in this area. Clearance of the variety of trees within this area to facilitate the construction of the new house itself. Looking in the opposite direction, the hedge that I mentioned along the southern boundary, proposal is for that to be retained, and you'll see there are conditions that require protection measures to be put in place during construction. The Northmuir Hall, just in the middle ground of the photograph that you see in this image. But this is effectively from the new boundary that would be created with the Benihee property looking in an easterly direction back towards the hall building. The existing garage that would be associated with the new build property and Callanish property located to the north. It has planning permission for an extension to its south elevation. As we saw from the elevation drawings, it's a blank gable that's facing towards that property, and the separation distances in this case comply with the council's spatial standards. So no issues in terms of impact on neighbouring property, in terms of the spatial standards we have set through our design guidance. Finally, just a view on Shield Hill Road. This is the Barber Bank property, and new access formed in this location in a similar fashion to the Barber Bank property. So new access located in here to serve the parent property at Benihee. Again, roads colleagues satisfied that can be done in a safe manner, and certainly it's done in a manner that's consistent with those that are commonly found within the Barber Bank area. It's a site within a development boundary. It has potential to accommodate a new house. It can accommodate a new house in a manner that complies with our development plan policy and complies with our relevant design guidance and spatial standards, and it's recommended for approval. Thank you, Convener.
Do members have any questions for Mr. Hunter? Okay, being any questions on... Oh yes, Councillor Clark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Mr. Hunter. Just a couple of questions from me, if you don't mind. One is, and it might be a strange question, but I'll ask it anyway. When you mention unadopted roads, now I think most of us have had people in the past that have been very upset about unadopted roads for all sorts of reasons. And in the past, we used to be able to maybe bring them up to adopted standard. Is that able to be done these days?
Yeah, I think it is possible to attach planning conditions that require accesses to be improved. So in very broad terms, yes, it would be possible to do that. In relation to this particular proposal, I would say there is an existing access. There is one property that is served by that existing access, and this proposal does not intensify use of the unadopted road or the access that's taken from it. So I would suggest that in this instance, in planning terms, it wouldn't be reasonable to require the upgrade of the unadopted road, but in very broad terms, it is possible to attach conditions that would require upgrade of the road. I have to say that in this instance, I think given the physical constraints of the existing track, it would probably be difficult to bring it up to adoptable standard. And as it stands, it is in reasonable condition.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. There's no other hands I can see for questions to Mr. Hunter, so we'll move on. There are no speakers on this application either, so can we move straight to comments? Does anyone comments at all on the application? No comments either. Okay, I hear that. Just to summarise here again, then the design here is compatible with property in the area, and it would utilise an existing access. Impacts on infrastructure would not be significant or unacceptable. Although objections have been received from a number of parties, the concerns raised appear to have been taken into account in the consideration of this application and have been reviewed by consultees. The conditions are proposed where appropriate to address relevant issues, but the matters raised do not justify refusal of the application. So accordingly, I will move approval of application number 22/00267 full. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay, we'll move on. So just back to confirm application 22/00267 full is hereby approved. Right. Agenda item 10 is for an extension or a property first floor extension at Over Auchenleash at Glen Isla. Again, Mr. Hunter, could you start off with the slides, please?
Convener. So as you've indicated, this is an application for full planning permission for an extension to the or within the curtilage of the existing residential property at Over Auchenleash, Glen Isla. Just moving a slide that shows the location of the application property. So application property in the centre of the image, identified by the red dot. And we have a number of orange circles that identify the location of properties that have raised objection to the application. So we have one to the north, one immediately to the east, and one a distance to the southeast of the application site. Another couple of objections to the application, but those are from properties that are at slightly greater distance, one maybe a mile or so to the north, and another a few miles to the southeast of the application site. But just to give some context, we have Curtin of Glen Isla, located maybe a couple of kilometres or so to the east of the application site. This is the public road that runs from Curtin of Glen Isla up to Forter and eventually across to Glen Shee. And we have the public road running from Brulan's Bridge, in a southerly direction that skirts the western extent of the application property. Another couple of properties located just to the south of that public road. In a little bit more detail, we have the application site identified in red, other land within the applicant's control identified in blue, and the access to the property just coming from the area to the west. Neighbouring property at Newland, and I think we have the occupant of that property along to speak to address committee today. So this is the closest property affected by the proposed development. In, again, a little bit more detail, we have the application property itself, and this is the location of the proposed development. The green area identified on this slide identifies the location of the extension itself. See a couple of outbuildings associated with the property just located to the south, and you can see the Newlands property itself. Separation distance in excess of 20 metres between the green area and the Newlands property located at the right-hand side of the screen. So we have a few elevation drawings of the proposal. This is the existing cottage. The area at the right-hand side of the screen, stone and slate construction. As we move along, stone walls with a corrugated metal style roof, a gap formed by existing stone walls, a small courtyard area that would sit between the gable end of the property and existing stone walls that would accommodate the carport with a very modern design located sitting above the existing walls. Just to make out, this is glazed panels, metal panels, so a combination of glazing and metal with the flat roof tying through with the height of the existing structure itself. A view from the west, so this is the west elevation. If you can imagine the gable of the existing property sitting behind that. So this extends beyond the pitch of the roof of the existing property. Again, the glass and metal with the flat roof detail. The east elevation, so this is the elevation that would look towards the Newlands property. This is the view from the courtyard. This would be effectively the view from the neighbouring Newlands property. Again, glass panels, but covered by a metal louver type detail to provide some screening towards the neighbouring property. And this is effectively the north elevation. Again, glazing, which would provide views across the glen towards the River Isla and up the glen. Aerial view, just to give some context, this is the application site located in the area that we see here. Just around about where the cursor is the location of the proposed extension. The Newlands property, maybe just draw members' attention to the fairly generous amenity space associated with that property that's evident from this slide. We have roughly 50 metres of woodland between the extension and the public road that runs to the west of the site and between the properties that lie to the west. Just in relation to this slide, I'll show a few photographs that provide context. The first one is taken from this point, so that's about, as we move through the presentation, I'll show another one from the access to the property located just round about here. And again, through the presentation, I'll show one taken from the south, just round about the position shown on the cursor. But I'll refer to those points as we move through. So this is the first view. This is the view from the point 200 metres away, so view from the public road. The extension itself would sit above the walls that you can see in this area, so roughly in the location that we see here. So Over Auchinleash property identified in this location, and the Newlands property located at the left-hand side of the screen. So the grey metal, the glass, in terms of palette of material, ties in with what we're looking at in this location. The form, the flat roof structure, looks markedly different from the existing pattern of development that's at this location. But as referenced in the report, throughout the Glen, we have building groups where there are a variety of building styles, and that's one of the characteristic features of the Glen. Again, at this point, structure sitting in this location, it has the backdrop of the woodland that you see in this area. Closer view, structure would be located on top of those stone walls. You can see the glass gable associated property and a window in the neighbouring Newlands property, which we'll see in a little bit more detail again as we move through. So, photograph taken effectively from the glass wall that would look towards the Newlands property. As I've indicated, this glass wall would be partially screened by metal louver type screening. You can see the existing property, glazing, metal roof, a brick-built gable wall, and you can perhaps make out fairly limited visibility or views available to the south of the property. To the north of the property, you have the existing window in the Newlands property, which is close to the boundary with the parent property, looking onto some of the garden ground. But the separation distance between the proposed window and this window would be in excess of 20 metres, and 20 metres is the maximum separation distance of the separation distance that our policies would typically look for between two main living room windows. So easily complies with the separation distances identified in council guidance, but the view in this direction would be partially obscured by the horizontal louver type detail that's proposed as part of the proposal. Again, this is just a view of the southern extent of the parent owns property. So again, you can see from the glazed area, limited visibility, limited intervisibility between the two from this point. View from the access to the property, a view from roughly the public road, from the access track that serves Over Auchinleash. The extension would be located roughly in the area identified by the cursor. So certainly some screening provided by the existing woodland in this location. Moving around, this is to the south, again from the public road, an outbuilding associated with the Newlands property, Newlands itself sitting behind that, and the proposed extension, again, located behind the woodland screening that we see in the middle ground of this particular image. This is a view from the opposite side of the glen, so from the Glenila Forter Road. Application site located within the area that we see here. So again, in terms of views from the eastern side, from the public road to the east, there will be some visibility as you move up this road. There will be increased visibility of the extension. It would be seen against the backdrop of the woodland that we see in this location. This is Auchinleash House. At its time, or in its time, would have been a modern building, probably a modern building that would have been considered out of keeping with the character of the croft-type properties within the glen. Occupies a fairly prominent position. It's 2 stories high, also with some dormer accommodation in the roof space. So prominent building, more prominent than the extension that we're looking at, and in its time, a modern and new property that would have been out of keeping with the glen. But a couple of extra slides here. Modern and new doesn't equal unacceptable or bad. This is an example of a fairly modern property, modern design, departs from the traditional appearance of properties in Angus, sits adjacent to a stone and slate constructed property. Very modern materials, very modern form, lots of glazing, lots of metal. And this is a property that's been recognised both locally and nationally as contributing to our architectural heritage. We have a track record of supporting new and modern development, and in its own small way, a very modest extension to a residential property, about 4.6 metres in height. A modest extension to a property which in its own way may, through time, make a contribution to our architectural heritage. It's a proposal that we consider is compatible with the Council's design policies, the ambition to promote good quality design and architecture. It's recommended for approval. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Alan, for that presentation. Following Mr. Hunter's presentation, have members got any questions for Mr. Hunter on his presentation? Okay, nothing there. Oh yes, Councillor Clark, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chair. It's just a question from me again, and I can see you smiling there. Yeah, it's really just a very basic question. Every time I read flat roof, it kind of puts shivers up me, because I've seen what flat roofs can actually do, especially with the amount of flooding we get. So I'm just wondering, we've suddenly got flat roofs that are a lot better than they used to be. It's not a trick question, I promise.
So I have a section of flat roof on my own house, a modern extension to it. It's a pitched roof, or the parent property, pitched roof, semi-detached Victorian villa with a modern style flat roof extension on the back, and it has a membrane lining which, touch wood, has been reasonably water resilient over the 10, probably 15 years that it's been in situ. Will it require maintenance? Yes, it will. Does a slate roof require maintenance through time? Yes, it does. Does a tile roof require maintenance over time? Yes, it does. So certainly in relation to that, any proposal that's constructed at the site will be required to comply with relevant building standards. And you know, I I can't sit here and offer any guarantee that materials will keep the water out, but it will be required to comply with relevant building standards.
I stand corrected, Convener and Mr Hunter. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Clark. I can't see any other hands up for questions to Mr Hunter on this one. Which case we can move to, we have two speakers here today. The first speaker is Mr Ian Cumming, who objects to the proposal and is the occupant owner of Newlands, immediately, I think, east of the property. Mr Cumming, sorry, do you want to go ahead and address the committee? You have 5 minutes.
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, excellent, thank you. We do not object in principle to an extension to the applicant's property, but we do strongly object to the design submitted of a first floor glass box and the impact it would have on the rural character of the area, on residential and amenity and privacy. This is not a sympathetic extension, but as stated by the applicant, it is a floating structure. It is essentially built on stilts above old walls accessed by a stairway and is separate from the main building. The applicant has stated that the design does not seek to be in keeping with vernacular buildings of the surrounding area. This directly conflicts with the council's own policies within the Angus Local Development Plan and associated guidance. The planning officer's report admits that the proposal is not entirely consistent with the associated design guidance on householder development. We agree the design completely conflicts with the following general design principles: that alteration and extensions should be architecturally sympathetic to the design of the existing residential property, that the external finishes of an alteration and extension should be complementary to the existing residential property and surrounding area, that the extension should normally have the same roof design as the existing residential property, that alterations and extensions to an existing residential property should be designed to avoid adverse impacts on the residential amenity of the neighbouring properties, that alterations and extensions should be designed to avoid over-dominating and overwhelming the appearance of the existing residential property or neighbouring properties. The one reason cited by the planning officer in support of the proposal is that the design is innovative and contemporary. This is a subjective view which should not overrule adopted Angus Council planning policy and advice. The glass box bears no relationship with the cottage and is a totally incongruous and alien design solution. There are no precedents locally for contemporary glass structures at first floor level in residential properties. Examples presented by the applicant relate to completely different contexts, including the pyramid at the Louvre in Paris, designed in 1983, and do not relate in any way to this site or area. We also disagree with the reliance on existing landscape screening. Over-Auchenleash has thick scrubland that has grown up over the years in front of it, not tree planting, and the property is very visible as it is approached by the road that curves round from the west. Light refraction from the glass and aluminium with it will make it even more visible. The proposal conflicts with policy DS3, design quality and placemaking, and the design and placemaking supplementary guidance, which require that development proposals complement rather than detract from the local identity. This proposal clearly does not comply with this guidance. As a square construction, it oversails the roof at both sides, so is visible from parts of our garden, affecting us visually and impacting our privacy. The proposal is therefore conflicts with policy DS4, which seeks to protect the environment and amenity. Policy DS4 also requires an assessment on the impact of proposals on light pollution, yet this has not been carried out, even though the planning officer acknowledges that the glass box will be visible at night when lit. The glass box will result in light pollution and there will be a significant detrimental impact on amenity contrary to the policy. The aluminium causes substantial light reflection in daylight. Sound pollution will also be a problem. Sound from a raised structure carries a long way, and although described as a room for contemplation, there will be no restriction for its use for entertaining. No information has been provided to assess the impact impact on birds. This is a raised first floor, four-sided glass structure and would be a danger to birds. The failure to address this issue through an ecological appraisal fails to address the requirements of policy DS4.
You have one more minute, Mr. Cumming.
Yeah. The view of many people living locally is that the structure is not innovative or of high quality design. It is a crude glass box reminiscent of outdated modernist ideas. Local Outcomes Improvement Plan is not supported by this proposal, which is an extension to a holiday home and does not contribute to a sustainable community, as it is difficult to see how a glass box can have a reduced carbon footprint. There is little scope for insulation and heating, and cooling would require a large input of energy. With climate change resulting in extreme weather events, storms and heat waves, it is hard to see how this is an innovative design for an extension. We would respectfully request that the application is refused and that the applicant resubmits a proposal that does not raise the issues of concern referred to. Thank you very much for your time.
Bang on 5 minutes. Well done, Mr. Cumming. Thank you very much for that. Do members have any questions they wish to ask Mr. Cumming at this stage? Okay, thank you, Mr. Cumming. There's no questions for you from the elected members at the moment. Move on to the applicant's agent, which is, I believe, Miss Rosemary Scrimger. Is that correct, Ms. Scrimger? I've got your name right, hopefully. Again, you have 5 minutes to address the committee, and I'll let you know when you've got 1 minute to go. Carry on.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm here really just to answer any questions, but I'll make a couple of points whilst I'm here. So, as a local architecture practice, my husband Ben and I, we work from Lintrathon, which is where I have been born and grown up, and we now have our practice here. We very much care about the character of historic buildings and local communities, and we are a conservation practice specialising in working with old buildings. And what we like to do is preserve what's original and add something of our time. The last thing we would want to do is be involved in a project that's going to have an adverse impact on the local area. And we are confident that this is an interesting and innovative design, and also that it is very small scale and positioned in a location that we do not foresee having, it can't really be seen from many areas, but at the same time, it's something that we're excited about in terms of a contemporary project in the Angus Glens. We have a book here in the office, I don't know if you can see it, called New Design for Old Buildings, and it's by the Royal RIBA, the Royal Institute for British Architects. What this book does is it lays out what's encouraged in terms of how to work with old buildings now. The general idea being, and I have a quote here, our duty is to preserve what the past has to say for itself and to say for ourselves what shall be true for the future. And the general idea that this book lays out is that when we're working with old buildings, we shouldn't be seeking to replicate and design things pretending that this part was also built 200 years ago. We should be designing proudly for our time, because our time is significant, as has been every time in the past. And therefore, whilst I understand comments that have been made of this design is not the same as everything else that's been built, that's because it's 2022 and this is a design that's been designed in our age now. The materiality is very much inspired by agricultural material palettes, so metal, glass, and simple structures with no funny angles. It's a simple, agriculturally inspired, however different design. One other thing, okay, so birds and glass and energy performance have all been raised, but I won't go into them because they've been covered in the planning report. And from the sustainability point of view, that will be covered within building warrant stage. It's impossible to get a building warrant for something that doesn't comply with the energy rules. And so that's something that I wouldn't be concerned about. Other thing, there's one window on the neighbouring property. Our client just asked us to highlight that that's a high-level window in a kitchen. So the window that was shown in the photograph looking towards the boundary is an up-high window in a double-height kitchen space. It's not a, a bedroom, is my understanding. But if anyone has any questions, I'm here to answer those. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Scrimgeour. Can I ask any of the committee members, have they any questions for Ms. Scrimgeour as the applicant's agent? No, you're off the hook, Ms. Scrimgeour. No, nothing, no questions from the elected members. So thank you for that. You can stay to the end of the meeting if you wish, but we'll move on to comments from members on this one before I go and sum up and decide what we're doing. Are there any comments from members? Councillor Beattie?
Thank you, Convener. Yeah, I actually do have a couple of comments to make on this one. Mr. Cummings summarised the council policy very well, and in fact covered a couple of things that I want to talk about. There's an element of the policy, TC2, that applies to residential development for the conversion of non-residential buildings, and it covers this. And the policy states that to be suitable for conversion, a building should have characteristics that would make a positive contribution to the character and architectural heritage of rural Angus. Such non-residential buildings are often constructed in stone, have a simple form of few openings, have pitched roofs, which are covered in slate. The policy supports the conversion of appropriate buildings that would retain or enhance the valued architectural features. I struggle with this one. For that reason, and also for the reason of the overlooking and the loss of privacy. Yeah, I mean that window in the neighbouring property might be above a kitchen, but you will be able to see into that property from other parts of this extent or this little bit of development. This is the problem that I have with this, I'm afraid. But Mr. Cumming covered pretty much everything else exactly as I was thinking.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Beattie. Councillor Brays.
Yes, thanks, Convener, and I will be very brief this time. I fully take on board what Councillor Beattie is saying there, because I have given quite a bit of consideration to that myself. But I do think that a real need to be progressive for the reasons that Ms. Scrimgeour pointed out. We are in the 21st century now, and there is a huge preponderance, particularly in rural areas, of Victoriana, and I think that there is room to adapt and to have progressive architecture alongside it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Brays. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you very much, Convener. Though this application complies with building regulations, etc., in my opinion, it doesn't suit the Glen. It's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nicholl. Short and sweet. I don't see any other hands up. If everyone's finished with comments. Okay, to kind of sum up here, I, as in 2 or 3 of the applications today, I spent time going out and seeing the sites, which I always recommend to committee members to do, particularly when there are comments and lists of support and lists of refusal. But this was one of 2 or 3 interesting ones I went out this weekend to see, and I've got to say serious misgivings about this application. I don't. It was described by, I think it was described by Mr. Hunter actually, as modest. I don't see it as being modest at all. The size and the size of it in its location, it's basically a square box. It's imposing, and I know they have tried to they have tried to assist, if you like, Mr. Coming in the next door by putting these aluminium foils or louvers. From what I can see, I think they're particularly ugly anyway. I think it'd be better with the glass, to be frank. But all said, I think Mrs. Scrimgeour mentioned about a time and a place. Well, there might be the time, but I just don't see it as being the place for this development. So I'm actually going to move refusal of this application on the reason of under policy DS3, particularly DS3, on design quality, bearing in mind that, as I say, the DSD does mention that if it fits in with the character and pattern of development in the surrounding area, it doesn't, as far as I'm concerned. And it should also, under policy DSD, sensitively integrate with the landscape features. It doesn't, as far as I'm concerned. Also, under policy DS4, on amenities, here, it is more of a design thing for me, certainly, but I do believe that being of the structure, the size, the raised level on stilts, that it does actually provide an unacceptable adverse impact on the surrounding area. As you drive back from the site and drive back along the road back towards Kirkton and Glen Island, look back, this would be a shining beacon when the lights are all on in it. Maybe okay in the summertime, but in the winter when all the leaves are off the trees, it will be obvious to much more than just a few houses. And it would actually affect the valley of the Glen at that point. It was quite obvious to me that. So there's light pollution issues for me under DS4. And I think also there's an element of residential amenity effect here as well. Under policy TC4, household and domestic development, again, I do feel there may be an impact adversely affecting the residential amenities enjoyed by surrounding houses, and it is detrimental, I think, to the character of the surrounding buildings. That's my reasoning. I'm going to, as I say, move for refusal. Do I have a seconder?
I have a seconder.
Seconded.
Okay, Councillor Nicola, you're in the first. Thank you very much for that. Is there any amendment by any other member seeking to actually propose approval of this application? Councillor Duff?
Yeah, Convener, I'll happily move the basis of the officer's original report.
Okay, thank you for that. And a seconder?
Yes, Convener, I'm happy to second Councillor Duff.
Okay, Councillor Faber, that's fine. Thank you very much. I know, Councillor Brace, you've also raised your hand on that. Okay, I think we've had all the comments and that we require. We'll go to a vote on this. So, Sarah, do you want to go out with the call out to people? Or?
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Keep this.
That's okay.
Yep.
As long as members can hear me, it's no.
So I'm guessing motion will be for refusal.
Yes. So the motion by yourself, Convener, seconded by Councillor Nicholl, is to refuse the application. And I'll just see if I can read out these reasons. As the proposal would not fit with the character and pattern of development in the surrounding area, or sensitively integrate with landscape features. The proposal would also have an unacceptable adverse impact on the surrounding area, in particular in relation to the levels of light pollution and in relation to residential amenity, overlooking and loss of privacy. And is therefore contrary to policies DS3 and DS4 of the development plan. Also in relation to policy TC2, Convener, the proposal would adversely affect the residential amenity enjoyed by the house and detrimentally affect the character in the surrounding buildings. The amendment by Councillor Duff, seconded by Councillor Fairweather, is to approve the application as detailed in the report. Please vote motion or amendment. Convener?
Motion.
Councillor Beattie?
Motion.
Councillor Brace?
Amendment.
Councillor Clark?
Motion.
Councillor Doran?
Motion.
Councillor Duff?
Amendment.
Councillor Fairweather?
Amendment.
Councillor Gall?
Amendment.
Councillor McLean?
Amendment.
Councillor Melville,
Amendment.
Councillor Nicholl,
Motion.
Councillor Stewart.
Amendment.
The amendment is carried by 7 votes to 5. The application is approved.
Okay, thank you everyone. That's democracy for you at work. So application number 22/00289 full is hereby approved. Thank you for your input to that, and thank you for the speakers. Okay, we can move on to the last item on the agenda today, which is agenda item 11, which is the proposal application notice for Moneyfeith High School. Mr. Hunter, do you want to address us anything to this at the moment?
Sorry, convener, I'm now unmuted. This is a proposal of application notice. So this is an intimation to elected members that a major application is likely to be submitted for works at Moneyfeith High School at Panmuirfield Road. Essentially, it's intimation that a major application is likely to come forward for the construction of a replacement school, nursery and associated development. The site identified just at the screen here, white shows essentially the footprint of the existing building, and the green tone identifies the playing fields and associated or neighbouring land, which is subject to open space protection policies. Extent of the school seen as existing, with its the red outline showing the existing curtilage of the property. Purpose of the report is to identify issues that we think would be relevant to consideration of any application that comes forward, and those are outlined at paragraph 4.6 of the report, and to provide opportunity for members to identify any other planning matters that they would wish to see addressed as part of the proposal. So just an aerial photograph, again, showing the extent of the school and its associated the playing fields subject to open space protection policy. So the impact on the playing fields would be a material consideration. Accessibility of the school, we have Ferry Road located to the south. But in very general terms, this is an existing school site. Proposal to put back an existing a replacement school. In very broad terms, it's going to be compatible with policy. But as indicated, the details identified at paragraph 4.6 of the report are the matters that officers think would be relevant. Members are asked to confirm that or identify any additional issues they would wish to see considered as part of a proposal that comes forward. Thank you, convener.
Yes, Hunter, again for all you've put forward this morning. Do members have any questions for Mr. Hunter on the planning application notice? Nothing at the moment. The key issues, as Mr. Hunter has mentioned, are shown in paragraph 4.6 of the report. So do members here have anything further they would like to see addressed as part of this? Councillor Dorn, over to you.
Yep, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me okay. And within the application, I'd like to see the plans for the kind of the energy use within the building outlined. If an application comes forward, I think this has been raised in some of the consultations, and I think it would be good to see that around the planning for energy use in the building.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Melville?
I was going to say something very similar to what Councillor Doran has just said there, but I would also add it would be nice if there was any consideration given to potentially renewable energy generation on site, because obviously there'll be a lot of roof space and it could be a good place to get some solar panels.
Okay, thank you for that. Move on to Councillor Brace.
Well, Councillor Melville took the words out of my mouth. But apart from that, it's pretty thorough. PAN and all the things that are of relevance in planning, I'm sure will be dealt with in the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brace. Any other comments to be raised at this point? Nope. Okay, can we just agree at this point then to note the report at this stage?
Noted.
Okay, report 1992 then is now noted. That, I think, brings our meeting to a close. Thank everyone for all your input this morning. And we'll close the meeting at that point. If we can just close off the camera.